You ever have one of those mornings where something just feels off before you even finish your coffee? That was me, out at my quiet little cabin in the woods, no neighbors for miles. Just trees, birds, and peace. I wasn't expecting company, especially not the kind that pulls up in a black SUV and starts snooping around like they own the place. At first, I thought maybe it was law enforcement or someone looking for help. But when I saw those matching polos with HOA enforcement stitched on the chest, I knew this wasn't a normal visit. And here's the kicker: I'm not even in an HOA. Not now, not ever. They were poking around my property, taking photos, measuring things, writing stuff down like they were about to fine me for breathing the air wrong. I gave them a minute, thinking maybe they'd realize their mistake and move on. But they didn't. One of them even started looking through my window like it was a routine inspection. That's when I knew something had to be done. I didn't want trouble, but I also wasn't about to let strangers act like they had authority over me or my land. So I did what anyone might do out here in the middle of nowhere when their space gets invaded. I stepped out onto the porch, holding my unloaded shotgun in plain sight, not aiming it. Not threatening, just making it very clear I wasn't going to be pushed around. Their reaction? Let's just say those HOA agents suddenly remembered a very urgent meeting somewhere else. But here's where things get weird. What they said as they left made me question everything. Was this really a simple case of mistaken address, or was something deeper going on? Stick around, because this story's just getting started. As they sped off down the gravel road, kicking up a cloud of dust behind them, I just stood there on my porch, heart still pounding. It wasn't the first strange thing to happen out here, but this one felt different. I leaned the shotgun back against the wall and grabbed my phone, thinking maybe I missed some letter or notice. Nothing. No missed calls. No warnings. Just 3 strangers in HOA uniforms acting like they had every right to be on my land. Now, let me be clear, I bought this cabin off-grid for a reason. No HOA, no neighbors peeking over fences, no city rules creeping in. I did my homework before I signed anything. This place is outside the nearest HOA boundary by a solid 10 miles. So why were they here? What made them drive all the way out into the forest, clipboard in hand, like I was violating some landscaping rule? The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. And then there was what one of them said right before they left. The younger guy, nervously backing away, mumbled something like, "This wasn't on the map," before the older one shushed him and ushered him into the SUV. I didn't catch all of it, but it stuck with me. What map? Who sent them? And why did they seem more confused than angry when I confronted them? I went back inside, locked the door, and started pulling up records, land surveys, county plats, anything I could find. My property lines were clear. No overlap, no shared access roads, no pending disputes. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random mistake. Someone had targeted my land, or maybe me, for a reason. I just didn't know why yet. But I had a feeling I was about to find out. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside had me on edge. It's one thing to have random hikers pass through or the occasional lost camper, but 3 so-called HOA agents showing up unannounced. That's a whole different level. And the more I replayed the scene in my head, the more it felt off. They weren't just confused, they looked nervous, like they didn't belong there any more than I thought they did. The next morning, I drove into town. I figured maybe someone at the county office or land records might have heard something, maybe a boundary change or zoning mess-up. But when I asked around, nobody knew a thing. My lot was still marked as private, unincorporated, no HOA jurisdiction. The woman at the counter even raised an eyebrow when I mentioned HOA enforcement agents. She said, "There's no HOA with authority out near your road. Closest one's over in Pine Hollow, and they've got their hands full just keeping lawns mowed. I left with more questions than answers. But then, as I was heading back to my truck, I noticed something odd. Parked down the block, same black SUV from yesterday, same tinted windows. I didn't make eye contact, just walked slow and kept it cool. But when I turned the corner, I caught them in the rearview mirror, pulling out and following me. They stayed a few cars back the whole ride out of town, but I knew it was them. Back at the cabin, I circled around through the woods before heading to the front door. Sure enough, fresh tire marks in the gravel, not mine. Someone had been there while I was gone. I went inside, checking everything. Nothing stolen, but my back window, slightly cracked open, and on the floor, right by the table, was a manila envelope. No return address, just my name, written in block letters. Whatever was in there, it was about to change everything. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the envelope like it might bite. Everything felt still, too still. No birds outside, no breeze through the trees, just that heavy silence that tells you something's wrong. I picked it up carefully, hands a little shaky, and opened the flap. Inside were just two things: an old black and white aerial photo of my property and a folded note. The photo looked decades old. My cabin wasn't even there yet, but something else was, right near the edge of where my shed sits now. There was what looked like a square structure, like a concrete foundation or bunker. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was stiff, like someone wrote it fast or didn't want to be recognized. It said, "You're not supposed to be living here. Do not dig, do not move the stones." That's it. No name, no signature, no explanation. I read it twice. Then again, my mind started racing. Who sent this? Was it a threat, a warning, or something else entirely? That old photoet didn't match any land surveys I had. I checked the GPS coordinates. That structure in the picture, it lined up exactly with the overgrown patch behind my shed, the one I always thought was just leftover debris from the previous owner. I never touched it, but now I couldn't ignore it. And the phrase, "do not dig," stuck with me. Because a few days before all this started, I had moved a couple of those old rocks to clear space for firewood. That's when everything began. The strange vehicle sightings, the so-called HOA visit, the envelope, all of it. It wasn't just about property lines anymore. Something or someone had been buried here long before I arrived. And now that I'd disturbed it, I had a feeling whatever secret had been hidden beneath those stones wasn't going to stay buried for much longer. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The old rocks behind the shed, the ones I had casually moved days earlier, were suddenly the center of everything. I grabbed a flashlight, a shovel, and headed out there just as the sun dipped behind the trees. The ground was still soft from last week's rain, and as I dug, something metallic clinked against the shovel. A few more scoops, and there it was. Old hatch, rusted around the edges, with a handle that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. My gut told me to stop, to turn back and leave it alone. But curiosity got the better of me. I pulled hard, and the hatch creaked open. A cold, musty air rushed out. Inside, a narrow stairwell led down into darkness. I hesitated for a second, then stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The concrete walls were lined with faded military markings, and further in, I found what looked like old storage units abandoned, untouched, but definitely not part of any regular home construction. Then I found a box. Wooden, sealed, but cracked. Enough to peek inside. It wasn't treasure or weapons like my imagination had run wild with. It was documents. Government files, old photographs, and maps, each one stamped with a red classified mark. They were marked with coordinates that didn't just cover my land, but nearby properties too. Whatever this place had been, it was part of some Cold War-era installation shut down, buried. And forgotten, I backed out and sealed the hatch. Heart pounding. And just as I covered it up again, headlights cut through the trees. The black SUV. This time, it didn't stop at the driveway. It pulled right up, doors swinging open fast. But instead of the same men, a woman stepped out, badge in hand. "You were never supposed to find that," she said, calm but firm. "And now we need to talk." That's when I realized this wasn't just about land. I hadn't stumbled into an HOA dispute. I'd uncovered something much deeper. And I was already in it, whether I liked it or not. She introduced herself as part of a quiet federal task force, tasked with monitoring and protecting decommissioned Cold War sites like the one buried under my property. Turns out, back in the 1960s, this land had been part of a network of communication bunkers. Most were dismantled, erased from records, and sold off to private hands through shell companies. Mine slipped through unnoticed. She said when I moved those stones, I triggered a sensor that hadn't gone off in decades. That's what alerted them. The so-called HOA agents, not real. Just operatives sent to assess the situation without creating panic. But when I stepped out with the shotgun, they had to pull out before they could explain. She admitted they never expected anyone to settle so close to the hatch or accidentally reactivate the buried tech. All those maps, those notes, they were warning signs, panic fixes to a long-forgotten system waking up again. They offered me a deal. Keep quiet, don't dig again, and in return, they'd ensure my property stayed off the radar. No HOA visits, no strange vehicles, and no more surprises. I agreed, not because I was scared, but because I realized some things are better left buried literally. I bought this cabin for peace and freedom, not secret tunnels and black SUVs. Now things are back to normal. I split firewood, enjoy my coffee on the porch, and the woods are quiet again. But sometimes I catch myself glancing toward the shed, wondering what else might be hidden just beneath the surface. This story started with an HOA that didn't exist, but it ended with a truth stranger than anything I imagined. So if you're ever told you're part of an HOA, you never join Dig Deeper, you might find more than just rules. You might find history itself.